Hello guys, it's Revolution. So just a few days ago, the second trailer for the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie dropped. The trailer mainly focused on events that took place during the time period Frieza destroyed Planet Vegeta, revealing Goku's parents, Bardock and Gine, as well as showing King Vegeta and Goku, Vegeta and Broly as children. Unfortunately, this trailer and the events shown were the catalyst to the Dragon Ball community undergoing yet another uproar. This was concerning the fact that the trailer seems to be going in the direction of Dragon Ball Minus and not the Bardock special Dragon Ball Z Bardock, the father of Goku storyline. Now the Bardock special was pretty epic, it was a very entertaining feature. However, Dragon Ball Minus since its inception in 2014, yes 2014, has always been the canon Bardock story arc in relation to Dragon Ball Super. If you've been following my channel for a while now, you will know that I've always used Dragon Ball Minus as canon material to the Dragon Ball Super continuity. We're going to talk about that and clear up a lot of misinformation in the community about Dragon Ball Minus. Before we do so, just a quick question. Do you want Broly to survive come the end of the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie? Do you want to see him in a future series of Dragon Ball Super that may possibly come next year? This movie. Drop your thoughts down in the comment section. I look forward to reading them. And if you're new to this channel, please do hit that subscribe button and the bell button next to it to be notified whenever I release new content. If you love Dragon Ball, you will love this channel, I can assure you of that. Subscribe to Revolution and do keep lending me your energy. Do keep smashing that like button. So, way back in 2014, as a tie-in to the Jacko Galactic Patrolman manga called Dragon Ball Minus, which focused on the moment Goku was sent to Earth after Bardock suspected Frieza of being up to something and ultimately sent Goku away from Planet Vegeta to save Goku. This version of Bardock was a far cry from the version of Bardock we got in Dragon Ball Z Bardock, the father of Goku, and it also saw the first appearance of Goku's mother Gine in any of the Dragon Ball franchise. Dragon Ball Minus was written by Akira Toriyama himself. However, it was a significantly short story. It didn't delve too far into Bardock's characteristics, etc. It just gave you a small run of events that led to the destruction of Planet Vegeta. I think we can fully expect the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie to enhance and expand the Dragon Ball Minus story. It has been indicated by Nagamine and his production team that this portion of the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie, the Dragon Ball Minus element, will take place in the first 20 to 30 minutes of the feature film, which is going to be closing in on 2 hours. It will definitely expand on the events in Dragon Ball Minus. Whilst in manga form, pictures can tell 1,000 words, a few seconds of footage can tell 1,000,000 words. That's one major advantage that anime has over manga. Ultimately, whilst the through line of Dragon Ball Z, Bardock, father of Goku, and Dragon Ball Minus was the same and ultimately reached the same narrative conclusion of Goku being sent to Earth, there were plenty of different plot devices. The same can be said of the Dragon Ball Super manga and anime. They both have the same through line and they both have the same narrative conclusion. Toyotaro and Toei and their creative team are given bullet points by Toriyama that they adapt. Because of that freedom, they use different plot devices to come to the same conclusion, and that's why the stories differ from one another. But because the father of Goku was a TV special and was in animated form, they went far more in depth of Bardock's story and we got far more plot devices that were ultimately better than what we got in Dragon Ball Minus' short story. After all, whilst Bardock the father of Goku was a TV special, it didn't have the usual TV anime episode runtime of around 20 minutes. This feature ran for approximately 48 minutes. But ultimately, Dragon Ball Minus is canon to the mainstream continuity of Dragon Ball Super. The anime in this case, as we know that the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie will be a follow-up to the anime of Dragon Ball Super. The reason why? Well, Dragon Ball Minus was written by Akira Toriyama, and whilst it did come out in 2014, which obviously is pretty late in the Dragon Ball's lifespan, considering Toriyama started writing this stuff in 1980s, I guess you could say it was part of the Dragon Ball Renaissance that started with Battle of Gods in 2013. In fact, you could say that in some regards, Dragon Ball Minus was promotional material for Dragon Ball Super. Even Frieza acknowledges the Super Saiyan God in Dragon Ball Minus for the first time in the Dragon Ball franchise. And obviously the Super Saiyan God ritual was what allowed Goku to compete with Beerus, which was the catalyst for everything that happened in Dragon Ball Super. Given the fact that Dragon Ball Z Bardock, the father of Goku, dropped in October 1990, 28 years ago, was ultimately written, and I do apologize for my Japanese name pronunciations, Takao Toriyama. Goes without saying really what Toriyama would consider canon to the story he is writing. Now, I've been a Dragon Ball fan for a long time. I've been on Dragon Ball forums for over a decade, and I've come across all kinds of fans, and obviously what is canon in Dragon Ball is a very heated discussion. I've come across the Dragon Ball snarks, the elitists, the casuals, the fair weather fans. Nobody can seem to agree on what is canon. Now, this might be a pipe bomb for you and you might not like to hear it, but ultimately all Dragon Ball is canon. It ultimately comes down to what you prefer. If you prefer Dragon Ball GT, that's your choice, because Dragon Ball GT is a continuity of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. Of course, Akira Toriyama wasn't involved in the writing of Dragon Ball GT, but he was involved in Dragon Ball GT. He drew many a concept for Dragon Ball GT, whether it was minor or not, he was still involved. We don't truly know how involved Akira Toriyama is with the anime of Dragon Ball Super. We know he writes bullet points in the narrative through line and conclusions, but that's a far cry from how involved he was with his own manga back in the 80s and 90s. Ultimately, both Dragon Ball GT and Dragon Ball Super are official licensed continuities of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. If you prefer Dragon Ball Kai over the original Dragon Ball Z Japanese sub, or you prefer the Dragon Ball Z dub, that's absolutely up to you. What you prefer is canon to yourself. Toriyama doesn't give a shit about canon. He and Shueisha have given the okay to many different types of media, publishing their own exclusive Dragon Ball content. Dragon Ball Heroes, the games, the movies. Ultimately, all official licensed material concerning Dragon Ball that has been given the okay by Shueisha Studios or Akira Toriyama or his own studio, Bird Studios, is canon. Now, if you've been following my channel, you'll know that I often advocate that my personal canon, and that's what it ultimately is my personal canon, is whatever follows Akira Toriyama's vision of Dragon Ball, and in most cases implied vision. The truth is about Akira Toriyama, the guy's a hermit. He lives in the country in Japan. He very rarely does interviews. So what I mean by Akira Toriyama's implied vision is ultimately what has been suggested. Akira Toriyama has had heavy involvement concerning the narrative and vision and lore of that particular story. Obviously, Akira Toriyama was fully responsible for writing the manga of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, and it has been implied that he is heavily involved in Dragon Ball Super. Like I mentioned earlier, we don't know truly how involved, but we know he had a big part in the writing Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods alongside Yosuke Watanabe. He wrote Resurrection F, and we also know that he sent bullet points, like I keep mentioning, the narrative through line and narrative conclusion for the God of Destruction tournament, the Future Trunks saga, the Tournament of Power. There's even been plenty of interviews from Toei producers and executives stating that they've often sent their own ideas and their own plot devices back to Toriyama for approval. And ultimately, we know that Toriyama wrote Dragon Ball Minus. Whether it was a short story or not, whether you liked it or not, Toriyama wrote it. So once again, it makes absolute sense that Toriyama's personal canon, I guess you could say, is the Dragon Ball Z manga, and then Dragon Ball Super, which is why the Bardock character development in Dragon Ball Super Broly will be based on Dragon Ball Minus and not the father of Goku. Now, if you're like me and you prefer to use Akira Toriyama's vision or implied vision as the mainstream canonicity, as I often refer to Dragon Ball Super, I often call it the mainstream canonicity. That's absolutely fine, that's your personal choice, but it's also fine to have Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball GT as your own personal canonicity. I mean, I keep using the phrase personal canonicity, but ultimately all I really mean is your favourite or your preferred choice. Whilst Dragon Ball Super and Dragon Ball GT aren't canon to each other, they simply cannot fit narratively together and make coherent sense. They are ultimately canon unto themselves. Whilst you can say one continuity is not canon to the other continuity, you cannot say neither are canon plural. If you prefer Super, great. If you prefer GT, great. If you prefer Heroes, great. If you prefer Bardock TV special over Dragon Ball Minus, that's absolutely great. The Bardock Father of Goku TV special, you could still say, is canon to the Dragon Ball Z anime. But because Dragon Ball Super Broly is using Dragon Ball Minus as the material for Bardock, you cannot use that as a stick to beat the upcoming movie with it. It was simply never retconned because Dragon Ball Z Bardock, the father of Goku, was never written by Akira Toriyama. And of course, there's little minor details you could say was retcon, for example, the age of Goku when being sent to Earth, and obviously the fact that you see Bardock in the Dragon Ball Z manga in a Frieza flashback. And obviously in the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie trailer, you don't see Bardock confronting Frieza as he's destroying planet Vegeta, but obviously it's a trailer, it could just be an editing cut, we may get that in the movie, who knows. These little changes or minor retcons are exactly that, minor, they really don't impact the storyline that much. Retcons are not new to Dragon Ball or any fiction for that matter, especially in the comic manga industry. So personally, I have always considered Dragon Ball Minus to be canon to the Dragon Ball Super continuity. In fairness, Dragon Ball Minus was a little unheard of, it did go under the radar, but ultimately it did happen, it does exist, and as mentioned at the beginning of this video, it will most likely be expanded upon in this upcoming movie. But ultimately, Dragon Ball Z, Bardock, the father of Goku, also still exists, you can still enjoy it, it is still canon as is all licensed Dragon Ball material, because ultimately in Dragon Ball there is no canon. Now isn't that confusing? Personally, if it was up to me, I'd go the way of DC Infinite Crisis and have them all be their own parallel world. The Toriyama continuity, the equivalent to Earth 1. You'll know what I mean if you follow DC. I for one am extremely excited and hyped for the upcoming Dragon Ball Super Broly movie. Let me know all your thoughts on this. What do you consider your personal canon? Drop your thoughts down in the comment section. Big week of content on Revolution coming up, so make sure you subscribe if you're not. Keep smashing that like button. Until next time, Ad Astra.